Hello and welcome. Today I am joined by Andy Reay, who is a consultant strength and conditioning coach based in London. Andy, how you doing?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. No problem. Yeah, I recognise that scenery where you are now. So whereabouts are you?
So I'm Pure Sports Medicine in Moorgate. So we're one of the smaller clinics in the Pure Sports Medicine chain. Been here for 5 years. Used to run the strength and conditioning department. Now just gone to consultancy.
Yeah, I mean it's Moorgate. It's lovely though, isn't it? You say it's one of the smaller ones, but they're all really lovely clinics.
Yeah, so we back onto the Honorary Artillery Company ground. So look out the back, and it's lovely. Bit of greenery in London, which is nice. And actually, yeah, we've got a good little team here. Small team, work pretty well together. So it's nice. It's a nice place to be.
Yeah, cool. No, we'll come back to Pure Sports Medicine at the end of it because I know that there's some big plans in place for the company. But in terms of you then, so whereabouts are you from?
So I'm a London boy, sort of born and bred. I grew up in West London, which is where I am now, sort of Ickenham, Uxbridge. And then, grew up there, moved to Bristol for a little bit because I was playing rugby for Bristol at the time. Stayed there for about 7 years and then had kids and needed to get back to be close to the grandparents, so get some help.
So in terms of the rugby then, so at what point and like how was that completely full time?
So what happened, I got through school, played England under 18s, got into the England under 21 set up, and then I started playing for Quins in the academy. I think I was there for 3 years. I was in the academy for a while, got a chance in the second team when I was about 18, and then sort of a little bit through luck, really, but we had a few injuries in the first team. There was also the World Cup in 2003, so I was a centre, Will Greenwood was away. So I had a few run-outs for Quinn's first team, very lucky. And then I had a season where it didn't go particularly well. And then I moved to Bristol for a couple of years, hence the move. Played a couple of times for them, a few times in the Cup and once in the Premiership. And then had a fairly bad shoulder injury. And then from then on, to be honest with you, I don't think I was quite at that level to be there for my sort of whole career, being completely honest. So I played for about 10 years in the Championship. So I played for Moseley predominantly in Birmingham, and then played a bit of London Scottish, a bit of Ealing, and then finished up at Roslyn Park, which is where the sort of strength and conditioning career started.
Right. So was that formulated whilst you were rehabbing, or how did that come about?
No, I mean, I think what happened to me really, when I was at Harlequins, I think I didn't take it seriously enough. I think I was a bit too laid back, being completely honest. And then when I moved to Bristol, I had a bit of a shock, to be honest. It was Richard Hill was the coach, the ex-England scrum half, and he was a real stickler for being fit. And I turned up to pre-season as I sort of used to at Quins, not in good shape, frankly. And at Quins that was fine because you would get in good shape during pre-season, but that wasn't how he saw it. And actually, it was a big and really positive lesson for me, because I turned up and I wasn't in shape and I was miles off the pace. And actually, it took me a year really to get back into favour. And in that year, I really had a massive focus on my strength and my conditioning and getting in the best shape I could. And actually, since then, I've sort of carried it on, because you sort of realise how positive it is for you, well, for rugby, but also just how you feel. So I spent that year looking into my nutrition. I listened to podcasts. I strength trained as hard as I possibly could. I'd had a few injuries which I rehabbed, which I found super interesting, although that didn't really lead me to the rehab environment. And then from then on, really, that led me to do my sort of personal training, because it was something I was interested in. And then as time went on, I got to about 26, I think. And although I'd already attempted a degree before, went back and did my sport and exercise science. And that really sort of just continued to build. Really, I've always been interested in the body. The thing I've always excelled at was PE, sport, and in academia, really PE and sport as well. So it just sort of fell into place from there. But I think that moment in Bristol was the the real kicker, really. It's like, well, look, if you're going to do this at any level, you're going to have to take it much more seriously, and that sort of sparked the interest in everything strength and conditioning. Like I say, went to personal training and then built from there.
So how frank a conversation was that when it's like you're?
Well, I mean, it's you're going to go and train with the academy. That's basically how frank it was. You know, it's like you're not at the level we need you to be, so you're off. And actually, it was a tough year, but I look back at it, fairly fondly, really, just because it sort of set me up. It's like, well, if you want to do anything or get anywhere, then you need to work hard. And I think I was, like I say, I'd always just relied on. I was just a fairly good player, and actually to be at that level, especially now. I mean, you see the World Cup and stuff. You have to be at a phenomenal level, and I think if you're not taking it seriously, then you're not going to get there. So it was pretty frank. It was, you're not there, you're going to have to get there, and that was that.
So in terms of the World Cup, it's been amazing over the last few weeks. What are your thoughts? Like, how have things changed from the time when you were playing 20 years ago? So 20 years since they won the World Cup to where they're at now.
I mean, it's the physicality, really, more than anything. I mean, if you look at some of those. So when I was playing when I was younger, sort of 20, by the time I'd got to sort of early 30s, the physicality, in National 1 was vastly different. It's almost up at where it was before. So the strength and conditioning I think it's just taken off. And actually, I went to see the Lions play in South Africa, and from that moment on, you could hear the tackles on the pitch. And I think it's just, I think that's really it. It's just, it's now very structured. It's very, it's physically dominated. You look at the teams who are winning games. You've got South Africa, you've got France, you've got Ireland, and you just, and even England to a certain extent against South Africa the other night. It was a huge physical performance to even get to that point. And I think that's the difference. It's the skill level's gone up. I think it's much more structured. So it's maybe you don't have to rely on the much natural talent. I don't know whether that's the case or not, but it's certainly if you're gonna get to that point into international rugby, you're gonna have to be. You have to be strong, you have to be powerful, and you have to be able to get to the end of the game.
So do you think that like you mentioned, the skill level's gone up as well? Like sometimes people sometimes assume that the physicality is maybe overtaken the requirements for skill.
I don't know. I think there's a few. So if you watch Ireland, for example, they're very structured. They play within a structure, and they all do their job. And I think that's what's got them to world #1. And if you watch their skill set, so their kicking, their quality of pass, I think those have all gone up as well. It was interesting to watch Ireland against New Zealand, I thought, because New Zealand have always typically been much more reliant on natural talent, skill, how to evade people, how to manipulate defences. And I think that sort of showed, and I quite enjoyed the fact that New Zealand won that game against Ireland, because it just gives you it just makes you feel like there's still that needed in rugby. It's not just how to play within a structure and how to be able to do these skills really well. Actually, there's still a place for, vision and manipulating defences and footwork and skill. And I think so. I quite enjoyed the Kiwis beating the Irish, just because I feel like that's just a nice. It just goes to show that it's still in the game. Would be my point.
Yeah, a bit more of a purist viewpoint on
exactly. Yeah, pure sort of natural talent.
Yeah, and then what did you make of the England match?
I mean, look, I think as soon as their prop came on with 20 minutes to go, I've seen that guy scrummage before, and I thought we were going to be in trouble. And I said to a few mates that I was with, that was what happened, and that is what happened. I think you've got to be physical, and I think for South Africa, you're going to have to prize it out of their hands. They're not going to give it up by any stretch. I think England did well. I think their game plan was good. They matched them physically. It was just a couple of bits at the end, and it's fine margins.
Yeah. So then, just going back to you then, in terms of your career, then. So once you went to university then, did you have a clear plan of what you were trying to do?
Well, sort of loosely, but I didn't. It didn't actually work out that way. When I finished rugby, I was the head of S&C at Roslyn Park, which is the National One Rugby Club. So my view was that at the time, rugby was all I'd ever known. So I thought I would stay in rugby. And it got to the point actually when I retired, I was quite lucky. I was happy to retire. I knew I'd had my fill, and actually I knew halfway through my last season that was it for me. I can actually remember the moment I was laying on the floor. I'd just been run over by a 21-year-old, and I thought, what am I doing? And I can still picture the shape of the cloud I was looking up at. So it was lucky for me really. So when I finished rugby, I was happily retired, and actually I'd spent a bit of time away from it. I didn't really want to watch it. I wasn't a fan. I just needed a bit of a break from it. So I was looking at options, but of course, you know, when you're sort of early 30s, you can't go and do an apprenticeship somewhere where you can't get paid, you know, what a starting S&C coach would. So, and I just had a little boy. My son has Down syndrome, so we'd had a few medical things going on. He had a few operations he needed. He had some gut problems. And to be honest, I needed something that was more 9 to 5, something a little bit more stable. And then I saw the job come up, Pure Sports Medicine. So I went for it. And I think luckily the guy who was head of S&C at that point is an ex-rugby player. He used to be at London Scottish, where I was at. I didn't know him, but you know, when I met him, we got on really well, and he gave me the job. And actually, I'm really pleased that happened, because I love rehab now. I feel like a lot of the time in strength and conditioning at the moment, it's a lot based around numbers. It's, you know, how much can you do on this? How much can you do on this? How fast can you run? But actually, rehab is a much deeper dive into what's going on. And I think in clinic, you'll see a lot of people. Some people are strong, some people aren't. But even those people who are strong, you know, you can still be in pain, and it's a bit more of a puzzle. You know, so you're on the spot. It's like, right, what's going on here? Why is this person? Why can he still do these things, or why can she still do these things? But he or she is still in pain. And I think that was the I found that super interesting. And here at Pure, we work as a team. You know, I'm opposite a load of physios. We've got a gym right in the middle, so we all work together. We all discuss things, and it's great. And I find that, you know, I sort of feel like I've found my home a little bit in rehab, because I find it so interesting, you know. And I think there's so much we don't know in rehab, you know. And sometimes I think, you know, the coaching eye, obviously there's a lot of equipment out there at the moment, and I think our coaching eye now is the thing that we need to keep focus on. I think the equipment comes into it, and I think that will develop, and special tech will develop, and we can start to look more in depth at that stuff. But I think it's quite important to keep the coaching eye, you know, and that's what I like about here. I see all sorts of people, all sorts of levels of injury, all sorts of issues, and it's trying to solve them on a daily basis, really.
How do you keep the coaching eye then, and what is the coaching eye?
I think it's having some sort of a structure of how you think people should move. So, you know, I have a very short few tests. Something actually, so I did over COVID, I did an internship with Dave O'Sullivan, who's the now head physio of Australia, I think, at the moment. But it was great, and it just gives you a sort of few simple tests just to have a look at how people are moving, and what you think, what movements they're missing, and how then you might program. Now, for that was more physio based, but actually when you come into S&C perspective, it's, well, you can still have your big lifts, and you can still have your numbers, and you can still have your speed, but actually in and around that, you know, how are we individualizing programs? You know, is there anything that people are missing? Is there old injuries that are still going to bother people? Is there, you know, is there movements that are going to cause people problems, you know, potentially now or in the future? And it's trying to build a program around all of those things. And I think, yeah, that's and it's being, you know, it's being in clinic is the key. You know, watching people. You know, if you see 5 or 6 people a day, then you're going to start to just know what you're looking for. Then you try things, and if they work, they work. If they don't, you try and work out why. So I think that's good. That's the key, is just doing.
Yeah. And I guess you can hear you really thrive in the environment at Pure Sports Medicine. I guess that's going to be important to keep you motivated and wanting to keep doing that, because it would be easy to just get into formulaic, I guess.
Yeah, of course. And now look, I don't see, I see some people daily who I see a lot of the time who, we've got to a point where they've come in and they've had old injuries, and we've gotten to a point where they're comfortable and they're doing the stuff they want to do. And now it's either maintenance or it's just building them to see if we can just, nudge those scores up or improve on runs, 10K runs, things like that. But then, at the same time, I'll get a lot of people through from the physio who have been through their insurance sessions, and they're nearly there. But it's, are they strong enough? Is there anything that the physios have missed? And we discussed that between us. And then how do we get a program for them to be able to actually thrive outside of here?
So yeah, that's what I was interested in. So how that dynamic works between that do they come in on your side first? Is it a mixture?
Yeah, they can do, and we try and push people to, but generally we are a sports medicine clinic, so a lot of the time they'll come through the sports consultant docs or the physios generally, and then it will be, my services will just be offered. It's like, right, we've got you to this point. If we think, if you want to get to this point and you want to be pain-free and you want to be doing those exercises and things you want to do, long term, you probably need a block of strengthening. And then we go, and that seems to be the process. And that can be for, it can be for a couple of sessions. It can be for, I see people for a couple of years, or it can just be, we fix them up, we send them off, and they say, right, mate, I'm good with that. I can crack on with that. I'm pretty happy, and that's that.
And then in terms of that, I think it's a really interesting model that you've got. So you've obviously got the sports medics there, then you've got the physios, you've got a real multidisciplinary team. What are your thoughts on that team approach now? Because it's been quite siloed previously, where you've got different titles. What are your thoughts about titles going forward?
Look, I think within a clinic like this, there has to be some sort of boundaries. You'll see. Some physios our physios here are very exercise based. We're especially at Moorgate, we're an exercise based clinic. So there does need to be a level of this is your expertise and then this is my expertise. Now there is a little bit of space in the middle between physio and strength conditioning, and I think there's a space that a real opportunity there that needs to be filled, especially for S&C coaches. Actually, if you can be in a rehab environment, it teaches you a lot. And I think there's a lot of people out there, especially in the sort of general population, who have niggles. Everyone has a niggle, don't they? You could ask 10 people, and so they'd all have something slightly different. So if you understand injury and you understand what's going on, then there's a space for it. But at the same time, it takes a little bit of time when people come in and get used to the structure. But after a while, as long as everyone trusts you and you're respected within the clinic, it tends to work out well. But I definitely think there needs to be some level of boundary. A lot of physios will do some S&C work. A lot of S&C work will do some sort of injury-based work. But look, it's more about the trust within the team, isn't it? No one's going to send someone to me if they don't trust me. They'll just do it. If they think they can do a better job themselves, then they'll do a better job themselves. So it's been nice here. We've got quite a good team at Moorgate. We all sort of trust each other, and so it just sort of worked.
Yeah, because we're seeing quite a big shift where it's some in the NHS, but it's even in general practice, where a friend of mine, Andrew Macaulay, runs a unraveling S&C for therapists.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing that it's like merged. There's obviously got biomechanics that are coming in now, and it feels like it's being adopted into multidisciplinary professions. What are your thoughts on that?
Look, I don't see any issue with it. I think within a clinical environment like here, then there has to be certain boundaries, But if an individual is, is good enough, and they're studying it, and they're putting effort into it, and it's their own business, then if you've got the qualifications, you've got the qualifications. I don't see any particular issue with that. Like I say, if you're within a clinic environment like ours, there needs to be that, just to keep sort of harmony. But outside of that, I think there's a lot of scope for physios to do more strength conditioning work. I've done some in-house training with a couple of other physio clinics just on sort of exercise selection and getting into the nitty-gritty of how to load things well, and certain injuries and how I would do it. So there's certainly an interest out there, and there's you would think there's a market out there as well.
And then you see, like with social media, that's just exploded at the moment, and you've, like, in my feed reel, you see stuff coming out all the time, new conditioning, like when you hit a certain age, they're sending you these tailored things. So like, what are your thoughts about all of these plans? Because it's just like, it's overwhelming.
Well, look, I think you probably need to find someone who's just going to cut through the noise. So I mean, I do this 3 days a week, and then I have an online training business, and I think that my USP, which I was trying to get to, is just to have someone that you trust, that has done this before for themselves and for other people, and who can cut through the noise. So if you there is huge noise on social media. Should I be eating this? Should I be eating red meat? Should I eat this? Should I be keto? Should I train like this? Should I deadlift? Should I and I think it's so individual that there is no right answer. So you almost need to find someone you trust to say, right, whoever it might be. If it was me, it's Andy. This is what I've got. This is the exercise I really don't like doing. My knee hurts when I run. I would like to run though. Can we fix it? And we need to go through a process of, that's having someone to bounce ideas off like that, I think, is the answer. So it's really what I would say for people who are looking at a lot of social media is, if there's someone on there that really resonates with you, reach out to them. Reach out to them and say, look, this is what I've got. I like your content. I like what you're talking about. It makes a lot of sense to me. And see if you can get, because a lot of the time, otherwise you just get overwhelmed.
Yeah, well, then there's the Zoe app, there's Whoop, there's all these things that are coming through.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of information out there. It's what you do with the information, isn't it? I mean, I think sometimes with the people I see here, they're busy. Their HRV is never going to be optimal. So at some point you're going to have to train. And also, I think something we miss with HRV is, if you have a plan and you get to the end of the week, which is a hard week, you would expect your HRV to, not look optimal. But as long as that's within a plan that you understand that it's not going to be, then actually that's a good thing. Does that sort of make sense? I think a lot of the time we're looking at data where it's like one morning you wake up and it's like, oh, don't go to the gym today. So, well, actually, I've trained hard Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I know I've got the weekend off and I want to train today. So I can recover from this. But as long as you understand that, and that's where I think people fall down a little bit. Maybe they just they don't understand the nuance to it. And again, with the Zoe app, I get it, and I think it's great for information purposes. I just hope that we don't get too fragile with things, because there will be times where your blood sugar will spike, or it will need to spike, or you want to go and do something that makes your blood sugar spike. And actually, I think your body needs to have had some level of stress in that specific scenario to actually deal with it. So I just hope that Whoop and the Zoe and all this data don't stop people training because they don't understand the nuance of it. That's all. But I think it's great, and I think there'll be loads of data that comes out. And actually, for the Whoop stuff, what I'm starting to realise is exercise really is the least of your worries with HRV. It's sleep, kids, work stress, all of these things. So I've got an app on the software that I've got a bit of software that I use that gives me like an exertion score, which is a similar thing. It's heart rate, HRV, and mine's highest on a Sunday evening when I've had the weekend with the kids. exercised at all, and I barely slept. You know, and that's what you need to understand. Actually, exercise is really the least thing that sends your HRV spiraling out of control.
So what do you do in your app then, and what do you do in like in your that business then?
So for me, I started my online business. The reason was because I was seeing a lot of people here who really didn't need to come and see me once a week. They were very well versed in exercise. They just wanted a plan. You know, they're working hard. They've got a lot of other things to think about. So they just need a plan. So I just set up the online training. So basically, that's what I do. I check in with them every week just to check that everything's okay. They can message me. They've got someone to bounce ideas off, as discussed. And they just open their phone up that day and say, this is what it needs to do. This is what you need to do today, and they do it. And actually, it works well for that sort of person. You know, it's and also a lot of the time people don't have time to book an hour and a half out of their day to come and see me. They just want to, you know, they need to just crowbar their exercise in, and they'll do it when they can.
Yeah,
and it's been, you know, it's been working really well for that sort of cohort of people.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting then. So when did you set that up?
So I set it up. Well, I've been doing it for about 6 months now, but seriously about 4 months ago. But it's going really well, I think. But again, on that, you know, the reason I do this at Pure and I do that is because, you know, I like a bit of both. You know, I like it allows me to spend a bit of time at home, so I can sort of get in depth with people's programming, which I love. But also, I don't think I could do it all the time because, again, I feel like the coaching eye is important. I like talking to people.
Yeah, well, no, it's definitely good to have a diverse
Yeah.
things as well that you've got going on.
Yeah. So
yeah, when you were doing your sports science then, so like that's such a broad scope, you know, it's what I did as well. And there can be a risk that you kind of like, well, you've got a sports science degree. I like sport. Like, what are your views on if you're choosing to do sports science? And like, did you go in with a specific angle of where you were trying to go with it?
For me, honestly, it was just to get the bit of paper, really. I mean, in order to get into any strength conditioning job, you need to have a degree, and then you need to have an accreditation. So for me, it was a bit more of a means to an end. I felt like I've got a reasonable amount of experience in training myself, so I was sort of fairly happy with the technique and the numbers sort of stuff. But yeah, I mean, like I say, for me, it was a means to an end, really. I needed to have that on my CV to get a foot in the door.
Yeah. No, well, I think that's but I was always of that view that unless you need the degree, like you needed it for your instance or law or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like I used to just think, we would only employ someone who's got a degree, and that now I've kind of changed that now a lot, really, because it's like, well, it's like practical skills. Like you probably could have done the job, couldn't you, beforehand? But then
100%. Yeah, I do think there's a level of commitment needed to finish a degree. I think that's something that it will show. It shows that you can invest in something and you can see it through. I think especially if you've done it, you know, slightly later. You know, if you're a bit older and you've really committed to it and you've done well in it, I think that's quite an impressive thing. But yeah, at the same time, you know, you'll get people come in. I mean, it's similar with my sort of the personal training stuff. It's people can come in and they've never been in a gym in their life, but they like the idea of it. And not saying that they won't get to the point where they are good, because I know people who have done that. But yeah, like I said, I think practical skills, you know, spending time with people, dealing with different people, putting yourself under a bit of pressure, all comes from, you know, being in the firing line almost.
Yeah, and then you mentioned as well in terms of like so combining the coaching with tech. Like I know you and I have talked about some bits of tech in the past, but like how do you see that fitting in, and where do you see that going for the future in this area?
I think that the issue we've got at the moment with some tech is that people can perform. So the test that we use, people can perform, but I just think we need to question how they're doing it and if they're doing it. So when you get injured, what I find is the muscle that you get injured just gets toned down just a little bit. So you just don't use it quite as well. And I think if you were to, you can get someone back on a force plate and you can get them to jump as high, but you just got to question, are they doing it with the muscles that they've injured, or are they doing it another way? Has their body found another way of doing it? And I think we probably need to just build out the battery of tests, or build out the understanding of injuries and how we might test for those specific things as well as just the standard sort of jumping bit. So, I mean, you can use sort of handheld dynamometry, but again, that's sort of used a lot of the time by physios. And I see that really as the next step. So people getting used to things like, I know Val do the force frame and handheld dynamometry, but with a view maybe not to be quite so research driven, but be sort of principle driven. So it's like, right, well, what am I looking for here? How can I set up my own reliable test to find if I'm right or wrong? How can I then load that? And then how can I retest it to find out if I've solved that issue? And then you go into the bigger test and you say, right, I've solved that because both sides are, where we want them to be. And then we can go into the performance type stuff. And I'm not saying that's not happening at the moment, but I think there's just I just think we just need to build out the battery of tests and accept that sometimes things aren't going to be research driven. But if you're a good practitioner and if you can reason it clinically and you can see it improves after you've done an intervention, I think that's the positive thing. Because I think if we skip that step and we go straight to the whatever the end test is, and they can achieve it, you just got to question whether we've solved the actual root of the problem. Does that sort of make sense?
No, it does. No, it does. Yeah, it's combining quantitative and qualitative, isn't it? Really, in terms of what you're.
Yeah, exactly that. It's seeing, it's seeing how people move, and I think sometimes, like I say, you'll see people who can lift impressive weights. They can do these things. But you've got a question: does it look? Are they doing it well? Are they doing it, with the correct technique? And also, how are they managing it? Are they has their body just found a different way of doing it? And I think that's what we're missing at the moment a little bit, especially in strength conditioning. We're a little bit focused on the numbers when actually I think we just need to take a step back and think, right, well, why is this happening? Is there anything else I need to solve before I get to that point? Then we get to that point.
Yeah, because these systems that are coming out now, so whether it is strength by numbers, VAL, Kangatak, all of these things that are coming through, which is really good, and they're more clinic based, aren't they, than like the lab that we were involved with some tech before, but it's Vicon. Unless you've got a really serious setup, spend at MIP they spend £1 million on cameras, and it's like, well, that's probably not realistic financially, but also like what level do you need? Like, is that suitable? It wouldn't be suitable for your environment, I'm presuming.
No, and I think sometimes we look to elite sport a little bit too much. It's like, right, well, let's give everyone what they've got at elite sport. But actually, if you get someone who comes in every day and does a counter movement jump for their readiness score, for example, if you compare that to someone who's come in and they've never jumped on a force plate before, I mean, there is a vast difference. And actually, the testing sort of becomes less reliable because it could give you any score. Their technique is so varied from one jump to another that you just, like I say, you need to be there. You need to see it. You can use the equipment, but it might be that you say, right, that test for now we need to practice, and then we'll get to a point where it becomes a skill. I just think there's a lot to it. I think we're looking as clinics, we're looking into what's the next bit of equipment that we can use, when actually I think we probably just need to focus on, well, how can we use this bit well? And I think the force sets are great, loads of information out there. It's just we need to know, right, well, what are we looking for? And I just think, like I say, we just need to broaden our testing to just get more specific, get into the nitty gritty of what's doing what.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, we're, my background, sports science. I've been involved in sports tech for 16 years, but for me, it's always, this is a part of what you're doing. It's never the be all and end all. As soon as you come in and say this product's going to sort out everything, it's just like, come on. But it's a helpful tool.
Yeah. And yeah, so sometimes people come in and they're just not even ready for it, especially in the general population. You know, they're just it's not worth doing. It's so varied.
Yeah, and then, but have you seen a shift as well where people that the clients are demanding it? You're saying your setups are all in, you know, they're in nice places, paying a lot of money for things, and it's like, are they expecting more?
I think it depends on where you are. So I work in Moorgate. It's a little bit more creative around here. So people like to come in and they're not quite so bothered about it. I think from what I've heard, just you know, that people more in the city who are more data driven would, you know, they want to be on the forceps, they want to know the numbers. So it just depends on the person. I mean, people are interested in it, certainly. You know, it's a great thing to have something objective, isn't it? Right, you go away and this time you want this number, and then we can get you to this point. So yeah, I would say there is an increase in people wanting to know data, but it certainly depends on the person. You know, some people might just want an explanation of this is what I think's happening, this is what I think we need to do to get there, and I think by that point you'll be all right to go and, you know, run your 5K. They're not that bothered about, you know, performance as such. But then you might get someone who comes in and says, right, I want to run, you know, half marathon in this time, and then you're like, right, we need to get into depth about this.
Yeah, and then on a similar-ish subject. So in terms of like all the academic qualifications, so you've got the sort of hard facts of things. What do you see as being from like a mindset perspective and like the non-clinical skills that have helped you be successful, or what you've picked up from whether it's rugby or in the clinical business world?
I mean, from rugby, it's definitely sort of team. You know, you have to get on with everybody, otherwise you fail. So I think rugby was certainly, you know, how to be a part of a team. Then I think from clinical, you know, just spending time with different personalities. You know, people are going to come in and they're going to, you have to adapt to what they want. And at the end of the day, you know, if they want that, that's what they want. So I think, yeah, just being in front of people, just it's the soft skills of how you say things. You know, I think we're very conscious here of sort of statements that might cause anxiety. You know, a lot of the time, as you probably know, we get a lot of people who come in and they'll have been told 10 years ago that, you know, their knees are going to be, they're going to need a knee replacement now, you know, and you're like, I think here especially we're very careful with stuff like that. But yeah, generally rugby team here, team to a certain extent, and then just how to speak to people. It's the soft skills, isn't it? You know, people need to come in and you need to build confidence. They need to know that actually you've got their best interest at heart. You're going to work as hard as you can to get them to this point, and you're going to do everything you possibly can. And if you don't know, you can find out. And I think that's the key. You know, if people trust that you've got their best interest at heart, I think that will take you a long way. And then if you've got the desire to find knowledge, then again, you're going to go out and look for it. And then from there, you're going to learn.
And how well prepared did you feel when you were going into that? You'd been in rugby, so you'd had some exposure there, but
not at all. Not at all. I mean, I'd always personal trained alongside of it. So I feel like I have the experience of how to talk to people at least. I think from an injury, from a rehab perspective, you know, you need to have some sort of idea of what's going. You know, when people meet you, they need to think or know that you've got some sort of idea, or at least some sort of plan of what you think is the direction of travel. Now, you'll pivot lots of times, but if you can say, look, at the moment, this is what I think we need to do. This is how I think we're going to get there. This is what that path looks like. You know, that instills some confidence. And then you just got to be honest. You know, if in 2 weeks' time someone comes back to me and I say, look, I think I was wrong here. I think actually this is what we're going to do. At least you've been honest, and they're like, right. And you say, this is why. So I've gone away and I've thought about this. I've researched this. And I think actually we need to just pivot just a little bit and do this. I mean, that in itself is a great thing, isn't it? Because at least you know then that that person is, has your best interests and is really actually trying to help.
Yeah, and then also like for you setting up your own business now, I know what it's like setting a business up, and it comes with a lot of stress and time investment. You've already got busy weekends from the sounds of it, from what you're saying. So it's like, what have you taken from your past experiences into how you're going to develop your own business?
Look, it's the service industry, so I think it's just trying to provide the best service you can. Now, I know very little about the other business sides of things, the marketing, the financials, the sort of setting things up. Has been a real learning curve, but I've had some help with that, which has been great. And then from then, it's just trying to. Someone said to me when I started online coaching, they said, "Well, you've been in-person coaching for a long time, so you know that, but." Online coaching is different, and you need to learn that as well. And although I've done some online coaching before, it was just that really. It's just same as anything really. It's trying to make things better, learning from any mistakes, see if you can tweak things, and just make the service as good as it possibly can be. But the same thing with the in-person. It's people need to know that you've got their best interests at heart. If I was just to sign someone up and take their money, and it's never going to work long term. So it's, well, how can I make this work? How can I show this person that I'm in it, to help? And I think once you can get to that point, the other stuff, you can work out as you go.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then what is your goal then for both the work at your own business and Pure Sports Med?
I mean, to be honest with you, just earn a decent living, really. I mean, I'm more than happy here. I like my in-person stuff. The reason I wanted to do the online stuff is just to do something a little bit different. And then it gives me a little bit of an opportunity to just be at home, take the kids to school, pick them up, and that it's just having a look at what you want your life to look like, and sort of trying to make a bit of a plan from there. So at the moment, I'm sort of happy with how it's going. I just want to build up to a certain point, and I want to stop and just sort of take a step back, have a look at it, see if I can improve it, see if there's anything that I can do better, and then then start to build it again. So that's sort of the plan, but no real master plan at the moment. I feel like being self-employed, opportunities pop up. This, for example, if you put yourself out there, you can, you find that people have opportunities, and people need your help, and people are willing to help you as well, actually.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So really, yeah, so just do this and keep reaching out to people and see where it takes me, really. And certainly since I've been self-employed the last 6 months, it's been great. Lots of things popping up, little bits of CPD I've done for people, some webinars, some podcasts, and see where it takes me.
Oh, very good. And then in terms of your own development as well, do you do any sort of non-clinical books or self-development, professional development books?
I mean, this is going to sound really boring, but this is really the only thing I'm interested in. So I'm not forever. I mean, I'm forever experimenting. Really, I read articles, I read books, I experiment on myself. My wife laughs at me because she'll catch me in the front room trying to get into a ridiculous position. She's like, "What are you doing?" And it's just trying to work things out. So really, I'm answer your question all the time. I'm a bit of a
it's good.
about this stuff, really.
It's great to be passionate about what you're doing, so it's definitely not something that you should feel bad about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you find it sometimes you're just in a dream world because you're thinking about other stuff. And my wife's like, "Are you in work mode or are you at home?" I was like, "Sorry, just think about something." But
oh yeah,
but no, I find it interesting that there's, like I say, there's so much to rehab. I just think it's super interesting, and it's just it's frustrating at times, but it's just a puzzle to be solved, and I think that's the fun bit.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, just going back to what your point there, a lot of times you're in that mode when she's talking about her day or something, and it's just sort of like, "You listening to me?" Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But that's something I need to be better at, especially since doing my own stuff. Just because I think it's important to have a stop point, which
For sure.
I think a lot of people realise who are self-employed that it becomes much more difficult to put a barrier down between work and home.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. I think, yeah, I'm better at certain times, definitely better than I used to be. So it's, yeah, it's a skill in itself, but it definitely helps you long term. And then last question then. So what would your advice be for people trying to get into this area, whether it's rehab, S&C, what would you say?
Network. So just get out and talk to people. That would be my first bit of advice. And secondly, just as much in-person stuff as you can do. So go and spend time with people, try and watch what people do, try and spend time with clinicians. That'll network as well, but it also improve your coaching. I think a lot of the numbers stuff you can learn quickly. There'll be a manual on that stuff. I think if you want to set yourself apart in a rehab, from a rehab perspective, your coaching eye needs to be good. You need to have some sort of structure around what you're looking for. Yeah, I think that would probably be it. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, no, it does. No, it does.
Yeah. Like I say, I with technology, I think you can learn. You can read about. I think with the other stuff, a lot of people want to help. They want to help you. They want to give you information. I think if you can just put yourself out there as much as possible, if you're on social media, for example, and you're following someone, just send them a message. They can only say no. They can only say no. Send them a message. Can I speak to you? Can I have some of your time? Can I pay for some of your time? Can I, get your questions answered? Spend time with people, and just make sure you're in the forefront of people's minds. So if an opportunity comes up, they'll think, oh yeah, what about that guy? Yeah,
fully agree. No, great note to finish on. Andy, really appreciate your time today, and have a good day in clinic. And I'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Awesome, mate. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Thank you.
Yeah.